Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for March. Because he ain't doing the year anymore, because it's March. And you can't do the year. It's 2019, but you can't do the year. Joining me, he's been on a couple of times, but he's like, not just been on a couple of times, he's kind of like drafted people in from other places to be on the show as well. But he's kind of come back because he asked everybody else in the organisation if they want to come on, and they all said no, because they must have listened to the show. So in order to not appear rude, and say I can't do the show anymore, Caezar from Alleycat Games has just decided to step up and say, well, I suppose I can talk to you for a couple of minutes at the very, very most. Is there any chance we could mention some of the Kickstarter campaigns that we've been doing? And the answer to both of those questions is obviously yes. So, hello, Caezar.
Hello. Thank you for having me on again.
It's good to actually it's good to have you back, because I can't even remember the last time you were on. I think it's been like at least a year. I think we were I think last time we were talking, we were going to be talking about the Coral Island games. I think it was just you were in the process, I think, of starting the development side of things, and I don't think you'd actually got to the point of even being close to the Kickstarter. But since then, you've been a bit busy, ain't you? You're just a little bit busy.
Yeah, we have been. It's good and bad. So it's good because we've been busy, and hopefully we can get the games on time to deliver to backers and get it ready for Essen, which is obviously a big time of the year for us. But it's bad because obviously 3 campaigns all at once. We just wanted to get them out of the door all at the same time. So for the next 6 months, it'll be relatively quiet from us.
Was that a conscious decision to kind of get them out? Okay, for people who aren't aware, what were the games you had? Your Welcome to Dino World.
Yeah, and David and Nick came on for that, and James. So that was a really great episode, and it was fun to listen to them politely be nice about me.
No, I don't think David bothered being polite at all.
Well, that's just David, isn't it?
That is just David. David won't return my calls.
I do like that about him. I'm very much similar to him in that way.
He just kind of says how it is, basically.
Yes.
But that, that was a kind of success. I think the roll and write kind of genre kind of is going through a little bit of a renaissance, and you manage to kind of catch the crest of that wave, because a lot of people had some really, really positive things to say about the game, and it went on to fund kind of really, really well. So you did that. You've then got the Coral Islands kind of set of games. And that was I'm getting old. Was that the beginning of this year that kind of all kicked off?
Well remembered. It raised 16,000 and it had almost 500 backers. I mean, it was never a big Kickstarter game. It was always kind of like a light, casual, almost a family-friendly game. So we never expected it to do spectacularly well, but it did reasonably well. And, the backers have been fantastic and been really supportive about it. And hopefully it will go on to do well in retail, which is where we, as a business, expect it to do better.
Okay. Is that... and then obviously you've got latest one, which is Chocolate Factory, which is running just now. It is, as I say, it is March. So you've got that running just now. And that seems to be a similar kind of barnstormer in the same way that Dice Hospital kind of did, because Dice Hospital went on to do really, really well, and in fact that's not too long been actually fulfilled with a lot of people, and obviously that had dramas which we could talk about. You know, hello customs people, for all you customs people listening out there. I'm going to bleep out whatever Caezar has to say. I mean,
they have to do their job.
Yeah, I mean, we're jumping about a bit, but Dice Hospital kind of was in the situation that it landed in port, and the customs guys rocked up and said, "Hospitals, eh? Cardboard, eh? Little miniature ambulances, eh? Let's have a little look at that." What was the situation? What actually happened with kind of that?
Well, it was delayed by about 2 weeks because it was caught up in a storm in Shanghai. So both the ships that were destined for Europe and the US, they were both caught up for about 1 to 2 weeks now. The one that went to Australia, that went about a month earlier, and that was completely fine. But just those 2 ships, they just got stuck. In the US, it was completely fine. It arrived as we'd expect. It was about 4 or 5 weeks. But then for Europe, so landing in the UK, that took a very long time. Well, longer than I expected it to. So I think it arrived in 5 weeks. And then once it did land, customs basically said that they were going to check it further. And then apparently that initial check wasn't good enough. And then they wanted to do an X-ray check, and so forth. So all in all, it was stuck in customs for about 3 weeks, which is unheard of, especially when you have a sort of a light visual check and then an X-ray check. And according to the people who imported it for me, they said that had only happened once before out of like the thousands of board game projects that they had imported from China.
What, were they going to give you, like a badge or a shiny medal or something for being
Well, I wish they did, because it was cutting it fine, because, you know, we were desperate for backers to receive their copies before Essen, and that just wasn't possible because of customs. If customs had, you know, released the games within 3 to 5 days, which is the standard amount of time for a board game, backers would have got their copies as we arrived at Essen, really, in the UK and in Europe. So in the end, it just cut it too fine, and in fact, it was loaded onto the Games Quest truck to go on to Essen only 2 days after it arrived.
Whoa.
So it really cut it fine.
What was the reaction from the backers? I mean, were they kind of largely kind of sympathetic? Were they supportive?
Yeah, they were really supportive, and you know, our mantra was that whatever happened, we wanted the games to be at Essen, but then we would obviously take as many copies as were requested by the backers to pick them up.
Yeah.
So we had about 150 backers turn up to our stand to pick up their copies, and then we sold about 330 at Essen itself. All the while, Games Quest were beginning to start to ship the games out, albeit in their own way.
What was your experience like with them? Because there's been kind of, there's been kind of back and forwards. A lot of companies have, said, "I'm not using it again." I mean, did you find the service kind of okay? Was it,
Well, initially, the first wave was fine, because to be honest, their turnaround to get through the first wave was actually quicker than my US fulfillment partner.
Yeah.
The difference was that with my US fulfillment partner, it took them 3 weeks to get to the games once it landed in their warehouse.
Yeah.
But the difference was that they got every single game out within a week.
Right.
But Games Quest did it in waves, and unfortunately, when you do it in waves, you get some backers who get their copies, and then some backers are wondering where their games are.
Yeah.
And that's a really bad position to be in, because backers are then messaging you and saying, "Where's my game?" And then we're having to check whether their game's been sent out or not.
Okay.
Which is really frustrating. Mainly because I feel their pain. I want their games to go out at the same time as everyone else.
Mm-hmm. 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 But then, I mean, when it landed, I mean, the kind of the general consensus and kind of the word on the street is that it's kind of been really favourably received. There's a lot of people that are enjoying kind of playing their copies. And I mean, did you have any doubt about that? Were you like kind of like, well, I know as soon as they get the game into their hands, they're really, really going to kind of love it.
I mean, I you know what I'm like. I'm naturally a pessimistic, cynical sort of person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know. Which is why I asked you the question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question to ask. And my conservative view was I had hoped that it was going to do well because I really believed in it. And I thought it would do well, but I really wasn't sure how it was going to be received because at the time that we started to receive the copies of the game, I had started talking to distributors around the world. And some of them were coming back to me and saying, we really like the game, production value is excellent, but it does feel a little bit solitaire. But the question I always asked them back, because if they refused it, because 50% of distributors came back and said, yes, we'll take it. The 50% that said no, when I asked them the question, do you stock Role Player or Sagrada? And they said yes. My answer back to them was, well, Dice Hospital has exactly the same level of player interaction.
Yeah.
And I think, we've been proved right as a publishing house because the companies that have stocked Dice Hospital, they're continually coming back to us and saying, we need more stock. I mean, yeah. I just got an email today from the buyer from Asmodee UK, and he said, we desperately need more stock because we've run out.
How do you approach that then? Are you having to go, is it another Kickstarter then for Dice Hospital, or are you able to get the capital to then go and fund another kind of print run?
Yeah, we're lucky to be in a position where Dice Hospital can sort of fund itself now. So because Dice Hospital is doing really well in retail, the money that we get back from the distributors who buy them off us, we can reinvest into buying more copies. Obviously, having a Kickstarter is great because people are, putting their money where their mouth is and pre-ordering it, as it were. But at the same time, you can't keep going to Kickstarter to keep milking the cow, as it were, because it's not fair on backers, and then backers are going to at some point turn around and say, well, that's not fair on us because we want a new game or whatever. So for reprints, this is our first ever reprint of a product, and we're just going to have to put into our own pockets and say we need X number of thousand more copies.
Is that so? I mean, that must have been something you must have celebrated then. I mean, you and Cooley must have sat down and went, well, we've kind of, to get to the point where you have to demand, you have to go ahead and get a reprint done because there's so much demand for it. I mean, was that kind of like I guess not a turning point, but like a milestone in the company that you were like saying, well, actually, this is becoming, this is serious. The training wheels are coming off. We're having to do kind of, we're doing reprints now. So
yeah, it's certainly exciting. Again, I'm pessimistic sort of guy. I was watching a Dice Tower video, and they were sort of going over the games that they had most anticipated for 2018 and what they had thought of them now. And actually, Z Garcia and Tom Vassell were talking about Dice Hospital, and Tom Vassell said, yeah, it's a really cute, dice manipulation game, and Z said he liked it as well. But he said he was surprised that he couldn't find it in his local gaming stores. And that kind of irked me because clearly I was doing something wrong. And when I sort of started talking about it with my distributors, it turned out that there's just not enough copies to go around. So I was a bit flummoxed. I was like, well, clearly I need to do a reprint and potentially get it out to more distributors or whatever. So to that end, we're probably going to start we're going to switch our model from direct to distributors to potentially using a consolidator as well. Consolidators are sort of like a middleman between a publisher and a distributor, but they usually have better access to distributors because it's easier for distributors to buy from a consolidator than directly from someone like a small publisher like myself.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess that takes away the headache of the logistics of managing everything. That you just get like an email to say, right, okay, we need a print run of 6,000 copies that need to get done within this date, in order to keep the distribution kind of chain happy, and you're not actually needing to sit down with the distributors and kind of iron out all the different deals and everything like that as well. Yeah,
that's exactly it. And it sort of takes away the headache. You do have to obviously pay for it, so consolidators do take a bigger cut.
Yeah.
But it does take away the headache, and then, we can concentrate on doing what we do best, which is try to make really good games and then tell people about them, basically.
Yeah, at this stage in the business, is it still as important to make sure that Alley Cat Games becomes a name that more and more people kind of find out about, that people are demanding the kind of the product, than you kind of going, right, I need to guarantee, 60 pence profit in every pound that's coming through the business kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, if we touch on the branding side of things, that's always a difficulty for any publisher, is getting recognition for what you've done in the past, and then the trust that you get for your future products. Mm-hmm. Most consumers do not buy blind, but at the same time, if you're buying an FFG product or a Steve Jackson game product, you know what you're going to get, and the component quality, the type of game that they make, and you're more likely to be swayed in a certain way. But if you're someone of my size, it's difficult for someone to say, well, this is definitely going to be a good game or whatever, because you still haven't proved yourself. And that's especially the case in the US, where, as one of my distributors said, I don't have a foot through the door, I have a toe through the door. So, that was a good analogy, and that's what kind of, with the Z Garcia point, made me think, well, maybe we need to go through the consolidation model instead.
So are you doing what kind of, say, the Beatles did? Are you going to have to do your tour of America to kind of get your hit single in the Billboard Top 100, And do you sing like a cat?
I definitely can't sing. I used to rap, but I can't sing, that's for sure.
Okay, go on.
That's an old part of my history that we won't discuss.
I don't think we've ever had. I think we've talked about a whole pile of things when you were, getting your degree and becoming an educated man. But I never knew you used to flow.
Yeah, I did.
What was your rap? Yeah. What was your rapper name, Caezar?
It was MC Nucleus was my name. Because I was on my way to being a scientist.
Oh my goodness, MC Nucleus.
Yeah.
You didn't. I take it you didn't use rhymes like you saying, you just bring the red negative, I just bring the positive kind of thing. You didn't do that.
No.
We standing on
like
neutral ground because I'm a neutron coming at you in the big bomb. Gonna set my game on. You didn't do that. What kind of stuff? Oh wow.
Definitely
this
not.
is a whole podcast in itself.
I know. Yeah, let's not do that. But before we move on to the next subject, no, it was really fun. I did it from the age of 15 till about until I started my PhD, and the highlight of my career was supporting KRS-One, which was absolutely amazing.
No way.
So it was incredible.
You're joking
I still have the
me.
pictures of, no, that's what I did. That was the highlight of my career. So I never really had any fame or whatever, or it was nothing. It wasn't really paid well, but it was amazingly fun.
Are you joking me? You supported KRS-One from Boogie Down Productions, so I can cut my rap teeth on.
Yeah. I did it in Penzance, and that must have been 2000 and when would it have been? It would have been 2005, just before I started uni.
Wow.
And it was. And I went down with who they call the grandfather of UK hip hop, this guy called Blade.
Yeah.
And me and him were friends because we met through a mutual friend, because he's Armenian and I'm half Armenian, so we became friends, and he'd call me every couple of months just to chat about the Bristol hip hop scene. So it was great. So we drove down with Blade, and we picked up this up and coming DJ from Exeter, and then all of us did our thing in Penzance, and then I was the last act before KRS-One came on. So it was
that must have been mad.
It was mental. Yeah, there was 1,000 people in there, and it was a very small club. So it was good times.
But KRS-One he ended up and he's still doing kind of like the smaller gigs. He obviously doesn't bother with the arena stuff. I think he likes the kind of the close-up and personal kind of stuff, you know. Yeah,
and that was certainly the case then. But I think people nowadays, they don't know who KRS-One is, and that's fair enough. But whenever you play The Sound of the Police, they know what that song is.
I tell you, oh my goodness, Edutainment was like I think it was the last vinyl album I kind of bought.
Really?
This was years and years ago. I kind of, I was big into KRS-One. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Oh, wow, we're going to have, anyway, everybody's going to go on, who's this? Why aren't we talking about board games? We'll tell you what, you can wait, because not everything has to be about cardboard. Sometimes you have to talk about vinyl and beats.
Yes.
And we've done a hip-hop episode anyway, and everybody knows I got hip-hop roots, you know what I mean? Oh my goodness, this is amazing. But I mean, you've not just kind of the way I've seen it. You guys, I mean, I do mention you guys on a regular basis as one of these kind of chameleon success stories of a company that started out kind of making, your own games, like Lab Wars and obviously Cauldron Master to begin with, and then you've kind of slowly, I guess, kind of changed how things have run. I mean, you brought out, Ruthless. I mean, Roland was on the show.
Yeah, I heard that. It was a great episode.
Thank you very much. And Roland's a top guy, but I mean, Ruthless came out, which had no connection with you apart from you guys kind of joint publishing it. I think with I mean, what makes you decide? I mean, did you just sit there and go, do you know what? If we're going to take this forward, if we're going to move on, I need to maybe think about maybe where you were as a designer, your limitations as a designer, but know that you had the business savvy and the experience to maybe bring other people's projects on? Is that where that kind of came from?
Yeah, for sure. I came to a point where I was just about to fulfill Cauldron Master, and I realized that my talents were not in game design. And although I felt like, my game design skills were improving, they just weren't, top notch enough for what I hoped we could achieve for the company. So at that point, I started, I changed the model of the business whereby I would give royalties to designers for their games.
Was that, I mean, and did you go on a kind of a mad kind of signing spree then once you became a kind of a publisher? Did you want to make sure that you were sticking within kind of a set kind of look? Because all the games, what's striking about the Alley Cat portfolio is that they're striking. I mean, there's not that many kind of dull greys and, dark browns and blacks and stuff like that in the kind of the colour palette. I mean, you've got Dice Hospital, which looks like, every hospital I'd actually love to go to. You've got, Welcome to Dino World, again, kind of, shiny, lovely, colourful, kind of almost kind of, welcoming kind of thing. Was that the kind of, even Ruthless, I mean, the artwork on Ruthless, and Roland's going to be going, thank you, but the artwork on Ruthless was stunning. Did you have like a set vision, I'm going to try and sign these types of games? Or was it a case of, let's see what's out there, let's see what's interesting, let's see what I can bring in?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. There's the art and the graphics design, which to a degree a publisher can control. Obviously, it's dependent on the type of people they hire to do those sort of things. Yeah. But you can have a vision for those things and try to execute it as best as possible. And then the other side of the coin is the game design itself. When you're starting off as a smaller publisher, it's very difficult for you to persuade someone who has either published a game before or is an established game designer to basically give you one of their game designs. So I always thought about Alicat Games as Manchester City, whereby, right at the beginning, they were nobodies. But you had to slowly acquire, good, like Robinho, and then have Mark Hughes as your manager. And slowly, you will be improving your squad and your team so that at some point you will be, challenging for, really good positions for the Premier League. So that's how I always tried to have Alicat Games, is that right at the beginning, nobody knew who we were. And then slowly we've been improving our repertoire through good game designers, good artists, and it sort of snowballed from there.
Are you tempted at all to kind of still pick up the kind of the designer pad and pen, or are you concentrating fully on the business side of things now? I mean, you've got staff now.
Yeah.
You've got a Simon, which
yeah, we do have Simon. I have actually designed a game recently myself called Cat Cafe, which we are. My wife Cully thought of that name. It's a cute cat roll and write. So I still do dabble every now and then. But yeah, most of my time and focus is on actually just keeping the business going, which is difficult enough as it is.
Mm-hmm. Does it bring a whole load of levels of kind of stress to yourself? I mean, are you having to kind of are you moved on from? Is it moved away from being like a passion project to actually having to say, right, I'm going to have to bring in new skills. I'm going to have to learn how to do stuff. I need to think about VAT. I need to think about tax. I need to think about accountancy. I need to think about wages and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I think about it is, as long as I can afford to do it, I'll try to hire staff who are better than me at doing X, Y, Z. So, for instance, I had Nicola because, I was spending way too much time responding to customers. And, Nicola did lots of odd jobs for me and Cully, like she painted our house and she looks after our cats. So she quit her job and I said, hey, why don't you just come work for me for a couple of days a week? And she said, yeah, I'd love that because then I can work from home. So, but Nicola's great because, she can look after the customers and the support and, missing games and, blah, blah, blah. And then Bez came on board. She was the first person to come on board as sort of like a games developer / project manager.
Yeah.
And that's been really fruitful. And then Brett came on board, I think it was summer 2017 as a, fortnightly or monthly developer. And then most recently Simon, because I've just been so, busy with everything. He's come on board to be my right-hand man. So he sort of does sort of everything that I've been doing. So anything that I don't have time to do, I sort of give to Simon.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is fun, but it's just like with anything, you've got to know your limitations. And my limitations were I didn't have enough time to do everything, so I needed to hire people. Yeah. And also, like, I don't want to do the bookkeeping or the tax, so Nicola and Katie have been doing that for me.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's a interesting division of labor.
And I mean, what's it been like, kind of working with Bez, because they are a force of nature.
Yeah.
I mean, has it been kind of like a nitroglycerin type mix? Because I've always, you've always struck me as kind of quite level-headed, kind of organised, a little bit serious. Obviously, this is before I discovered you were hip-hop rapping.
Yeah.
Way back in November. But, I mean, is it good to have somebody with obviously the kind of the energy levels and imagination that Bez has to kind of bring them into the business? If they help shake things up, kind of bring new angles, new kind of ways of thinking into the business?
Yeah, I mean, Simon is completely the opposite of Bez in that Simon is a lot more like me, where he is a jack of all trades, master of none. And that is very much my stance on everything, and Simon would agree that he is very much the same. While Bez is completely different, where I would say that her strengths are very much the creative sides. And, but it's good to have someone that will basically challenge you on what you feel should be happening to the development of a game, of the look of a game, etc., etc. So it's good to have someone who doesn't think the same way that you do.
And obviously, I mean, it's working well, because you're going to kind of strength to strength. Now we've got you've got Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
Kickstarting. There's been a lot of hype for this game, and it's been kind of, I mean, again, is this something that you've managed? I mean, you have to go, it's not just been like a kind of a scattergun approach with the marketing. I've been aware of like Chocolate Factory for kind of some time.
Yeah.
In the same way that I was aware of Dice Hospital for some time as well. Was that kind of like the marketing plan to kind of give snippets? I noticed you kind of like, you got the community involved in terms of what they thought of the designs and stuff like that as well. Was that all part of a general plan to kind of help keep the interest there, kind of build the hype as well?
In a way, yeah. In a way, yes. In a way, no. We originally had one artist who we thought was going to be perfect for the project. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. And then the second artist we picked out, who's quite a famous artist, and we've worked with them before, and it's yielded, good results. That didn't work out as well because he completely misunderstood our remit. So we just thought, let's just leave it. So all of that stuff, that really put us back, really far back. But I'm kind of grateful that happened as well, because it allowed us in the background to, Dice Hospital took over, and it was very, for everything, bit fulfillment and sending the games out and, designing the game, whatever. So that Chocolate Factory was always in the background, but we couldn't spend enough time. But all these delays actually allowed us in the development team and Matt and Brett to consistently just keep on playtesting and go, well, this needs to change and this needs to change. So that was okay. So the marketing of that was, yes, to build sort of like a community, but at the same time, we didn't really want it to drag on this long. So the aim was always actually to do it as a Q4 2018 Kickstarter. Yeah. But in the end, it became almost like a Q2 2019 Kickstarter. But that was okay, because all the changes that we've made since then have made it a much, much better game than it was when we first publicly demoed it at the UK Games Expo in 2018.
I mean, it's doing well. I mean, you've got a week.
It's doing well.
You've got a week to go, and you've kind of you set that the target was 12, almost 13,000, and you've done well over 52,000.
Yeah.
And you're almost at 1,000 backers.
Yeah.
I mean, are you looking at the screen at the same time going, somebody back, for goodness sake, 999 backers, for goodness sake, somebody press that button, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
But here's a question for you, and obviously, in terms of the funding goal, is that bang on what you need to get the game made, to get like the game out the door, or have you kind of slightly gone under what you kind of?
No, we always go. We always assume worst case scenario. If everyone hates the game, that number that we set as a funding target is to make 1,000 games, and then it will cover. It will effectively break even for 1,000 games, and to ship it to X number of backers. It's typically somewhere between 200 and 300 backers. Mm-hmm. And then that essentially breaks even in terms of delivery to those people, shipping from China to the UK, and manufacturing the game. That's why we always set it so low, because that is what is required of us. So that's how we factor in. But we never factor in sunk costs like art and graphic design, which, if you're using a very good artist, like for instance Samrina, they're quite expensive. So we don't factor those into the equation.
Okay, is that just like a necessary expense that has to be kind of coming out of the business externally to what happens to kind of like the Kickstarter itself?
Yeah, exactly. Because you've already paid that money. What's the point of trying to recoup that money back? The traditional method of publishing is that you pay for that money and you pay for the manufacturing, and then you hope that you make your money back. So at least with Kickstarter, you have some of the money recouped as a sort of prepayment for the game.
Have you? What do you think of this trend for people to kind of say, okay, we've got a 50 miniature game, and our funding goes like $10,000? Do you think it's kind of accelerating this kind of bubble bursting that people are kind of talking about, that we're going to end up with a couple of businesses or more businesses that can't deliver because they're just not getting the funds to be able to deliver?
I don't know. I think Kickstarter backers are a lot more savvy than the industry and the gaming, culture gives them credit for, because there have been thousands of Kickstarter projects, and to that effect, loads of Kickstarter backers know what's a good project to back and what's a dodgy project to back, and so forth. And a recent example was Aftershock. The one by Stronghold?
Yes.
Which is with Alan Moon. I mean, I sided with the publishers on that one because, a name like Aftershock is such a good name to use for an earthquake type game that I think it was unfair for people to call them out that they had copied some very small game that no one had ever heard of, and it was apparently educational, and it was a very small print run. Maybe the way they had gone about how they behaved towards that person could have been better, but I think all that stuff about copying or whatever was absolute nonsense. But at the same time, Kickstarter backers are like, well, you need to consider these things, and that's sort of like one example. And then the other example is, like you said, lowering the target so that it's really easy to reach. Publishers can do what the heck they like, but at the end of the day, Kickstarter backers talk with their money, and if they don't back your game, it means that no one wants your game. It's as simple as that. And if you do well, then good for you. That's great. Run it well, and you've made a game that people want to buy. But at the same time, it's difficult. I mean, running a Kickstarter is difficult because you don't know what price point people are willing to buy your game at. So sometimes it's just a shot in the dark. But you have to also cover your tracks in terms of, us European creators are very much held to VAT, which our American cousins don't have to, which is rather unfortunate because we have to up our prices while the American creators don't.
Yeah.
So they have an upper hand on us because, I constantly get American and Canadian backers saying, why is this so expensive? Without them having to factor in that I have to pay VAT on all the European transactions.
Yeah.
Price point's difficult. But yeah, I'm not sure there is a Kickstarter bubble, but you are definitely seeing a change in attitude towards people backing them because there are so many games. People have limited shelf space now, and it's just becoming more competitive. Yes, people are spending more money, but I think what people are doing are saving the money that they would have spent on maybe 3 Kickstarters over 1 or 2 months, and instead spending it on a mega campaign like a Batman, for instance.
Yeah.
So,
and then we'll see how that kind of, the bigger games kind of fulfill, because I think you also get, when you get these bigger tails on these longer games, it can also lead to a little bit of fatigue with some people.
Yeah.
For
sure.
I've not seen a smiley Dark Souls backer for a while, because I think they're still waiting for some of their wages. But I know, some of their pledge. But also at the same time, when kind of delays kick in, I think sometimes it puts people off. I also think that with there being so many games out, and people who want to support kind of individual companies, independent companies like yourself, there is also the part that with, there'll be a lot of people that will have gone on kind of everybody goes on their mass Kickstarter spending spree, but then you end up with like a, 10 10 or 12 games arriving in a year, and then it's getting those games kind of played. And I have heard a lot of people that saying, I'm not backing as much as I used to, not because I don't have the funds, but because what will happen is I'll get a Kickstarter pledge in, and my desire maybe to play it isn't there because the excitement's gone, and I just end up not playing it. It ends up sitting in the shelf, and it ends up kind of, I end up kind of basically kind of maybe selling it on or kind of getting rid of it. I mean, I know people complain about folk flipping it, but I am also aware of people that are just saying, well, yeah, I kind of waited 8 months for this and I've got it now and I'm not really interested in playing it because the kind of the excitement fires kind of died down a bit, and I
totally appreciate that. And, I'm a Kickstarter backer myself and I totally get that. The trick is that the publisher has to keep the backers consistently interested by updates and things like that, but also from the very beginning your game's got to stand out in some way, whether it's through beautiful art or some kind of unique mechanism in the game. It's got to be completely different so that by the time it does get through their letterbox, they will still want to play it as soon as possible.
Do you think the accessibility is important as well? And I don't mean accessibility through, like, say, colour blindness or stuff like that, but do you think it's really important to make sure that somebody can get a game to the table and easily learn and easily play a game? So, like, your playthrough videos from, like, Rado or, Man vs. Meeple and things like that. I noticed that you've got that for the Chocolate Factory. I mean, was that something you considered, making sure that, when people get this game, I want them to have 5 different videos they can watch so they can get it to the table and start playing regardless of, what's happening with rule books or anything like that?
Well, my position on Kickstarter is that the lighter games, like the ultra light, the ultra cheap games will continue to thrive on Kickstarter, but the middle ground, which is the games between the £20 and the £34-ish, they're the ones that are losing out because, in my opinion, people aren't as interested because there's so many choice in that range.
Yeah.
So it's actually the more, the BGG ratings 3 to 4 complexity rating that people are going to be going for on Kickstarter. And I think it's because people want that brain burnery thing from a Kickstarter game because, a complexity rating from 1.5 to 2.5, there's plenty of those sorts of games.
Yeah.
So I actually think is the other way around, is that people want a complicated game so that they feel like they've got their money's worth in a way. But at the same time, I do agree that the game itself has to be accessible in terms of a good rule book, a video playthrough, etc. Because yes, it may just sit on someone's shelf, even though they felt like it was value for money, because it's BGG complexity rating of 3 or 4, whatever.
Yeah. The other thing is, as well, is if I can say to people, I'm going to bring Dice Hospital along on Friday, and if I say, well, I tell you what, I'll send you the link to the YouTube video, it's not going to be one of those sessions where we spend an hour and a half trying to learn the game. We can get kind of straight into it, and everybody is kind of aware, and they can, and you need less kind of, I guess, you need less help kind of remembering the rules, and everybody can kind of pitch in and knows how to play it. And I think that's kind of important. I mean, just like kind of, Willy Wonka singing kind of "Come With Me," I'm expecting you to rap something, but anyway, what would you say the elevator pitch is? The kind of the kid in the candy store, kind of all these shiny wrappers, and there's Chocolate Factory sitting there on the shelf, and you're gonna reach for it, and what if I unwrapped Chocolate Factory? What kind of taste am I gonna get of the game? What's it gonna taste like? That's the worst analogy ever, but just run with it, Caezar, for goodness sake. Tell us what the game's about.
Well, the beauty about the game, and it's something that I've always been so excited about since Matt and Brett showed me the game, was simply the tactility of the game. Is that you're literally, pushing things around, and you feel the wooden pieces, and it's all wrapped up in an excellent Euro where you're literally building an engine on your factory board. So when you put that all together, I think it's an absolutely fantastic game because, you're pushing things around and you're changing things and you're getting that brain burnery feel. So, most Euros, they have a really nice brain burnery feel, but you're literally just, you push a cube and you say, okay, well, I've gone up to 2 resources. And then you say, okay, well, I play this card and I'm going to convert that resource to wood. So I change that down from 2 to 1 on my track and I move that up the track to 4, whatever. But it's completely different with Chocolate Factory because it's not only a tactile game and a Euro game, but it's also a spatial game because you've got to think, in 2 spaces time when I push it down again, what type of chocolate is it going to be and how can I convert it and make it, so that I'm able to swap it to something that is useful to me to sell to make my victory points. So I don't know many games like that. I think Mechanica is a lighter version of Chocolate Factory, which is also on Kickstarter right now. Yeah. But apart from these 2 games, there aren't any, tactile Euro games that I know of that has this sort of mechanics. One reviewer said Passing Through Petra has something like that. There's Automania, etc. But this, and when you mix it together with the beautiful art that Dennis has made, and the fact that it's a Matthew Dunson and Brett Gilbert game, I'm really confident that it will do just as well as Dice Hospital will in retail. It obviously hasn't reached the heights of Dice Hospital, and that's completely fair enough. But I think once people actually get to see it's that the player board is not just some kind of gimmick with a little hole through it, and it actually is a really good Euro game, that I think that it will really start to shine.
Yeah, but I mean, are you thinking also you've got the retail tail of this as well, though? I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, you're actively, and as you've said yourself, you're not just putting a Kickstarter out there and that's it, and hoping for a couple of retail pledges. You're actively kind of seeking retail arrangements with, distributors.
Yeah, with our distributors, yeah.
So you're hoping there's a tail on there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, like I said, it will do just as well as Dice Hospital. But, when we were at Essen and, we had like a very basic prototype box, we must have had about 100 people come up to our stand. It wasn't just me they were coming up to, it was all my volunteers, and they were saying, can I buy a copy of Chocolate Factory? And it was just literally the box. Not kidding. So people would see the box and they would see like an early prototype version of the board and stuff. And I do think that it's certainly got legs, and I'm really excited to see what happens when it gets out into the wide world and see if it does as well as Dice Hospital.
Are you tempted to do a stretch goal that would offer real chocolates?
Everyone always asks me that, and my answer is always the same: is that customs gave me difficulty for Dice Hospital. So can you imagine what the difficulty would be like with Chocolate Factory?
Yeah, I know, but it serves you right for shipping hard drugs with Dice Hospital.
You mean plastic ones, right?
Plastic morphine in every pack. That's why it did so well.
Yeah, of course.
No, I'm really joking. I mean, as I say, you've got like a week to go at time of recording. To get your foot in the door, what's the pledge levels? How much do people need to pay to get in?
So it's almost the same as Dice Hospital. So if you back Dice Hospital, this is marginally more expensive, like a couple of quid. Mm-hmm. So it's £45, and you get the base game, and you get it delivered to your door for free. And then on top of that, sorry?
I said that's cool.
Yeah. And then the deluxe edition, which has like a premium sleeve, the coal tokens are upgraded to little black gems. It's also got the cards, the factory cards that you usually put on top of the player board. They're converted to tiles. So that deluxe edition is £58. So it's an extra £13, but it really deluxifies the game. It makes it just feel that much nicer. And then Kickstarter backers will also get a Kickstarter promo pack as well, which they get for free. So it's like 6 cards, which are, you can guess what they are: the owner, the prodigy, and the helpers. So you can think what they are.
Can't for no. It's
No,
all.
it's
no.
a bit. Yeah, sometimes people get it, sometimes people don't.
You're just putting people through the mill burn.
Exactly. Yes, Simon will like that.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, as normal, what we'll do is we will get the links and we will put them in the show notes so that we have notes to show. And we will make sure that this goes far and wide as quickly as we can as well. You're doing some really, really exciting stuff. It's so cool to see you kind of obviously over the last kind of 3 years kind of grow from where you were with Lab Wars, which is I think where we kind of first crossed paths on the UK tabletop kind of Kickstarter Facebook group, to seeing you kind of, be where you are just now, which is, publishing, still, developing, kind of putting out these fantastic kind of Kickstarter projects. It's really, really cool, and it's quite encouraging for anyone else that's thinking, obviously, kind of looking at kind of starting the same kind of journey. Yeah. If people want to keep an eye on you guys, where can we find you on the interweb nets? Yeah.
We're on Facebook. You can just search for Alleycat Games, Twitter, Alleycat Games, and then our website is alleycatgames.com. Excellent.
As I say, we'll put the links in the show notes, so we've got notes to show. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, don't be silly. But you can go to Google and you can search for We're Not Wizards, and you'll find us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, not Tumblr, because Tumblr's dead. But you can also find us on places like YouTube, and you can follow our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com, and our website, which is we'renotwizards.com. You can email us, which is magic@we'renotwizards.com, and you can find us across all the different podcast catchers, like your Stitchers and Spreakers and Acasts and Castboxes and Podknives and Podbeans, and there's just so many, Caezar. There's so many. Spotify, Google Podcasts, it just, it's like they're growing like some kind of disease. It's incredible. There are a couple of things you can do. Is if you like the show and like what you've listened to, you can tell somebody else about it. That'd be fantastic. Or the other thing that you can do is you can drop yourself onto Apple Podcasts and leave us a subscription or a rating or a review. And, as I say, I've spoken to Caezar for about 3 years now, so he'll be aware of that we're still using the same rubbish jokes. But if you want to give us a rating or review, don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us a 5 because it's in the middle. And it's just a little bit kind of average. And we are just a little bit average. But the person who has not been average tonight is the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic, the very successful Mr. Caezar Al-Jassar. Thank you very much for coming on again, Caezar. It's been a pleasure as almost. There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Caezar?
Definitely not.
Nah, yeah, a hip hop artist. Dropping rhymes, giving us good times, Anyway, and the second thing is to say goodbye. So, it's a goodbye from Caezar. Say goodbye, Caezar.
Goodbye, Caezar.
And it's a every time, lovely. And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s. And you know what I mean? Everybody says keep an eye off the chocolates if you want to keep yourself healthy. But what I'm saying is, get yourself out the sweet cupboard and get yourself on a Kickstarter and check out Chocolate Factory. Not too much long ago. Definitely worthwhile having a look, having a savour, having a taste. And until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.